This video is going to contain spoilers from the off, so I'm warning you now. Episode 8 of Foundation has just arrived, and with it being titled Skin in the Game, we saw that there were quite literally many parties that still had a bit of skin in the game when it came to holding on to power and looking to prevent that eternal darkness. Most specifically, it felt like it was leaning into Dusk and the fact that he managed to get Demerzel right where he wanted her, with him potentially proving to be successful in avoiding his ascension. With the Mule knowing what it's like to almost meet his end, Gaal arriving on New Terminus and looking to confront the Mule head-on, Demerzel's therapy sessions reaching an upsetting end, and Brother Day's standing trial where we got more details about the ever-important Daniil. Let's jump into this episode and break down all the main talking points. Here is Foundation Season 3 Episode 8, Ending Explained. Brother Dusk versus the Galaxy. Brother Dusk has gone from being one of my least favourite Cleons to my favourite in the space of about 3 episodes. He's had an interesting journey throughout this season of the show because it's all been about him not wanting to turn into Brother Darkness and wanting to stay present for as long as possible, avoiding the Ascension at all costs. The Galactic Council pretty much turned on Empire in this episode as they planned on offering up Trantor to the Mule as a way of appeasing him with the hopes that he'd view it as a symbolic offering in which he'd get the heart of the galaxy. We've seen the Mule in action, and what this offering reminds me of is the Munich Agreement in 1938 when the Sudetenland was ceded to Germany by the UK, France and Italy in the hopes of preventing war, when in reality the rest of Czechoslovakia was later invaded in 1939 and war eventually commenced. And it feels like that's exactly what the Mule is going to do if Trantor is given to him as a way of appeasement. He'll get it and he'll just look to take more because he wants the entirety of the galaxy. Within this scene, we saw that it was actually the Luminists' vote and their incorporation that tipped the scales and got the vote through, which ultimately meant that Trantor would fall. But Empire as an individual could be saved, apparently. The Galactic Council have lost all faith in Empire following the way that the incident on Calgon happened when it was destroyed, and with 2 of the thrones sitting empty and the Council viewing the situation as one where an aging, cognitive declining Brother Dusk was all that remained, they weren't willing to listen to his ruling. As they said, they merely went there to make him aware that it would be happening, and there was nothing that he could do about it. At least, that's what they thought. Demerzel planned on decanting new Brother Dawn's and Brother Day's, following her believing that the both of them were dead. But Dusk managed to convince her to hold off on it because it would take days to get them up to speed following the decanting process, and they didn't have that time. Because by then, Dusk would be gone, as he only had 49 hours remaining, and Trantor would be in the palm of the Mule's hands. So instead, he informed her about the Novacula, also known as the Planet Destroyer, which we first saw in Episode 2 and knew would have a large role to play. It was during the scene where Dusk revealed the Novacula where we found out that it was supposed to be an ascension gift for Brother Dawn ascending the middle throne so that he had an immense amount of power as a deterrent to others. However, with Dawn believed to be dead, and with the rest of the galaxy turning on Empire, we're about to see Brother Dusk and Demerzel versus the entire galaxy. Dusk specifically said to Demerzel how their legacy was being ripped from their hands, which is a direct threat to the hold that Empire has, and to the Cleons themselves. So with Demerzel programmed to go to extreme lengths in order to preserve Empire, the Novacula is something that'll definitely be getting activated. There was a scene where following the Novacula being shown to us, Demerzel met with Zephyr Vorellis and the conversation that they had felt very final. Demerzel had shown a side to Vorellis that we hadn't truly seen her have with anybody else, other than in the hallucination scenes that Brother Day had in the previous episode. One where we saw emotion, upset, and a sense of feeling like an entrapped individual where the programming was almost weakening and she had the ability to speak. With the Luminists being part of the group that were willing to hand over Trantor and Demerzel giving back the bracelet, stating that she couldn't return to Maiden due to what she did before, but also because she was about to do something far worse. She's definitely talking about using the Novacula. Every time that Demerzel and Vorellis have been meeting with each other, Vorellis has been going through the erasure procedure before she leaves so that she wouldn't remember anything that Demerzel spoke of. And with this episode, we saw her going through it as she walked out of the orchard. That to me felt symbolic of the fact that they were never going to be speaking again. Plus, as well as that, when Vorellis walked through it, she asked why it was that she was crying. I'm presuming that Demerzel told her what they were about to do, and that Maiden could well end up being destroyed if they're going to participate in the handing over of Trantor. Vorellis said how the Luminists had power and that they weren't just passive in all of this, so it was the wrong thing for her to say because she's damned maiden to a sentence where they'll be destroyed. Demerzel was also seen to be upset during this, and she referred to Vorellis as a friendship, or at least something like that, so you could see that she herself was hurt with the destruction that she knew that she was going to cause because of the programming. Demerzel has seen what Gaal's vision has shown, and what it has shown is a darkness where they're floating around the edge of a black hole that's most likely going to be caused due to the Novacula. This could come at the hands of Brother Dusk and maybe even Demerzel. But if Demerzel gets destroyed and if Trantor is taken by the Mule, then that weapon in his hands could prove to be one of the deadliest combinations of all. Seldon and The Mule. This was an interaction that I was waiting for following the end of the previous episode, and it definitely delivered. The Mule was essentially trying to undermine Seldon in saying that he'd disrupted his plans and his life's work in no time at all because he was more than his plan could ever hold. Plus, he also went on to say that he was going to destroy the vault if he didn't reveal information about Gaal, where she was, what her intentions were, and what the master plan was. With Seldon not telling the Mule and instead going on to mock him, even trying to get inside of the mind of the copy, Seldon told the Mule how he knew that he was fumbling away in the dark trying to find his mind, which was a line that I absolutely loved. And then following that, he showed his true strength and used the power of the Null Field on him, raising him up into the air, and it seemed like he was in an excruciating amount of pain, causing his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose to bleed. Now, this was probably the biggest plot armor that there's been for the Mule, in the sense that Seldon let him live, which even the Mule was shocked about, but Seldon always has a greater plan, so I'm just going to put it down to that. Seldon said that he let him live because the Mule had a secret, and once he learned it, he thought he'd be of use to him. I do wonder what that secret could be. Could it be the secret about Magnifico being the Mule and that his identity is being concealed by this person? Or could it be that the Mule's backstory was fabricated and was just part of a wider lie? I'm thinking it could be focused around Magnifico or the Mule's past, because I don't feel like there are any other secrets that he could potentially be holding on to. Gaal's hunt for the Mule. Gaal was riddled with worry during episode 8 because she couldn't get a hold of Pritchard, and she knew that he could prove to be some kind of weak link if the Mule got a hold of him. This was because she heard firsthand how easy it was for the Mule to search around in Pritchard's mind and actually find out her name. Pritchard knew of Ignis, had been on it, had a relationship with Gaal, and also the plan that Gaal had. So if the Mule did get inside of there, it would cause the second foundation to be at great risk. So in order to stop that, she got one step ahead and went to New Terminus herself with the hopes of facing off against him and killing him. Whilst doing that, she also said to the first speaker that everybody on Ignis should evacuate, because if she doesn't make it back, then the Mule will be headed there to take out all other threats and the other Mentalics. The first speaker mentioned one way in which Gaal could use her Mentalic abilities against the Mule when she does confront him. He said how he should use the familiarity of walking through other Mentalics' minds and being lost in other people's thoughts as a learning curve. Something that the Mule hasn't had because he's been isolated. This felt like something that Tellum was extremely good at doing in Season 2, and we saw for the most part it was advantageous. So it'll be interesting to see how Gaal navigates that space. Gaal was skeptical because the battle that she thought would be taking place with the Mule was actually happening on New Terminus, rather than on Trantor like what she saw. However, as we saw with that vision, there were disparities like how Salva wasn't there when she was supposed to be. So I don't think that's anything to be too concerned about on Gaal's part. When Gaal saw the vault for the first time, that was a moment that I actually really felt the emotion from. Seldon, somebody that she said that she loved, was inside of there, and you could see the fact that she was in the proximity of Seldon, and that it was something that was taking over her mind, almost like there was a sense of comfort to that. The episode actually concluded with her running through the forest towards the Mule, so the conflict and the epic encounter between Gaal and her number one enemy looks like it's gonna happen in the next episode. The Mule was fully aware of Gaal's arrival due to the beggar being spotted, and with the Mule's confidence and desire to wipe out Gaal, I don't think there's going to be any hiding on his part. This will be Gaal's fiercest battle. She struggled against Tellum, but that was over a century and a half ago, so I'm intrigued to see how she'll fare and if she'll be able to bend psychohistory. Brother Day's trial. Now this was a truly interesting part of the episode. Following us being introduced to Sunmaster 18 in the previous episode, Brother Day was standing trial by the Faith to see what type of devil he was. This was taking place inside of the Sacratorium, and this trial revealed a few different things to us. The first is that Demerzel was the sole surviving robot that the inheritants spoke of when talking about the history of the very beings that they worshipped. They spoke of Daniil, the robot that would come back for them following the humans marking the robot species for execution and were eliminating them one by one. This was something that Brother Day cottoned onto and thought that he'd be able to use as leverage to prevent his sentence of death that looked to be on the horizon, as he knew that Daniil was one of the names that Demerzel had before she adopted the new face. But as well as that, when the brazen head was humming the tones that Day was familiar with, it reminded him of when he was younger and Demerzel was comforting him. She would hum the tones as a lullaby, which was seen to be Daniil's song. This was hummed because the robots once had something called a clasp, and it meant that if they wanted, they could essentially share one mind, and when Day mirrored the tones, it triggered the brazen head to essentially look for another robot. It was clear to see that the inheritants were starting to believe him, but when Sunmaster called him a liar and said that he was deceiving them all, they leaped onto him. Brother Day's mindset is one that's changed drastically throughout this season, and where his head is at now is that he wants to free Demerzel. He's gone from resenting her and neglecting the impending darkness that was on the horizon to realizing that she needed to be saved because she was the only person that was able to stop the mule. The Sunmaster knew that Day was telling the truth because he went through the memories of Song and saw Demerzel, but he didn't want to tell the inheritants because it wasn't in his best interest that they knew that a god walked among them. This is because he'd most likely lose all of the power that he had, and why would he give up being worshipped like a god and a leader when he could continue on in the way that he was? The episode concluded with Day being cast into a pit where microorganisms were going to be feeding on him. We're yet to see if he's going to survive, but if Day does survive, that could lead us to potentially have all of the Cleons still alive, and also maybe a decanted Dawn and Day, which could lead to some interesting conflict. I actually think Song could end up being the reason as to how Brother Day gets out of there, because she's actually going to believe what he said. Even though she doesn't love him, he'll feel a sense of love, and that will be what saves him. So I do hope that happens, because this version of Day, a character that I never thought I'd like, deserves a piece of happiness, even if it's brief. Brother Dawn is still alive. During the ending of the episode, we saw that good old Brother Dawn was still alive, and that following him being thrown into outer space a few episodes back, it was his suit which kept him alive following it taking heat and energy off of him, which is what gave him those horrific wounds on his legs. Plus, alongside that, Bayta was also recovering from the Null Field impacting her, but she seemed like she was pretty much back to full health. Brother Dawn was found by the Mule ship floating around the edge of Clarion, and now he was just orbiting New Terminus. When thinking about what it is that both of these two characters have that could be keeping them alive, I'm presuming the reason that Brother Dawn was kept alive was for the information that he might have been able to have shared about the location of Gaal and what her plan was. Dawn didn't actually know enough to prove to be of any help. However, I'm also guessing that he's going to be able to be used as leverage for the Mule when he next communicates with the likes of Brother Dusk on Trantor. But with Dawn now being viewed as a traitor by Brother Dusk and Demerzel, it might prove to be useless leverage. Then when it comes to Bayta, I think one of the reasons that she could be being kept alive is because she was the person that took Magnifico several episodes back, the Mule's magician and potential brother if some of the theories are correct. So the Mule might simply want to locate him and she could be the key to that. One thing that really piqued my interest with Bayta though when she communicated with the Mule was when she told him that she thought it was time to leave, and he simply did. This is a behavior that we've not really seen from the Mule before, and I'm not saying that she utilized any powers on him or anything like that, but it was interesting that there was a close-up on her, and then he simply followed what she said and didn't respond with any aggression. There is a different theory that's out there about the baby in the flashback from when the Mule was younger potentially being Bayta, so whilst there's not a ton of evidence for it, it would make a rather interesting twist if that was the case, so I guess we'll just have to see. My review of the episode. I think after last week, this could be my favourite episode of the show. The final third of it really made it feel like there was so much at stake and that everybody had skin in the game. We had Dusk and Demerzel preparing to use the Novacula, Gaal landing on New Terminus whilst looking for the Mule, and Brother Day falling through the trapdoor into complete darkness with the score building to this screeching crescendo. It left us at the highest point of the score with it not truly resolving, so from an emotive perspective, it left me right on the edge of just wanting to watch more. Usually, I have one or two standout scenes in an episode, but there were so many with this. I loved the Dusk and Demerzel interaction where the Novacula was revealed. I thought the one between the Mule and Harry Seldon was also incredible too. The way that Seldon showed just how strong he was when utilizing the Null Field and showing that he wasn't afraid of the Mule was perfect. And I loved the fact that we actually saw the Mule in a scared state for the first time. I also thought the scenes with Brother Day and witnessing just how much he changed his mind in wanting to free Demerzel when originally essentially being her captor. It just made for some real interesting viewing, and having the Sunmaster there opposite him, almost mirroring how he acted in Season 2, provided a great contrast of the shoe now being on the other foot. Two things that weren't answered in this episode from the previous one was where is Magnifico hiding and what's he up to, and also where did Tauren end up going to? I feel like Tauren is definitely going to have a role to play in the final 2 episodes, but right now I just can't quite put my finger on where he could be. I also think Magnifico might end up being the secret that Seldon said the Mule had, so I'm intrigued to see more there. The visuals in this episode, as per usual, were just top tier. Foundation just continues to prove why it's the best sci-fi show, not only on Apple TV, but across most of the leading platforms at the moment. The story itself is obviously around 80 years old and it's held up so well, but the performances, visuals, score, and attention, along with the emotive pull that it has, is just second to none. One thing that I was impressed with about this episode, when compared to other shows as well, is that the runtime was only around 45 minutes, but there was so much story told. There was no fluff, everything had value, but because there was so much going on, I felt like I had a presence in this world. It was just so immersive. Every time the episode changes scenes to another planet or a different group of characters, I'm not sitting there waiting to go back to where I was before, or to pick up with characters that we left. I'm just fully locked into every arc, and I just find it so engaging. I know we've got one more episode, then it's the finale, but with that final episode being titled The Darkness, the end that the Prime Radiant has predicted is something that it feels like could well come around. However, knowing this show, I reckon there's definitely going to be a twist that ends up occurring. Right, so I've been saying this since the second episode of the show, and now with there only being 2 episodes left, this has comfortably been the best season of Foundation, and the show has really evolved into something that I never thought it would become. Every week the level just goes up and I'm left wanting more, and I find myself feeling for characters and rooting for ones that I never thought I would. So until the next episode, get in the comments with your theories on how you think the season might just end. So, there you have it, Foundation Season 3 Episode 8, Ending Explained.